They thought they owned the house, until one hidden clause destroyed their plans. From the moment the papers were signed, Mark and Lisa believed they had secured the perfect dream home. A sprawling colonial with polished floors, sunlit rooms, and a garden that whispered of future barbecues and laughter. To outsiders, their excitement seemed justified. They had worked for years, scraping together savings, sacrificing vacations and comforts to make this house theirs. Yet behind the smiles and Instagram posts, a tension simmered. The house had belonged to my family for generations, and I had watched the pair, strangers to me but opportunists in every sense, maneuver themselves into what they thought was their new kingdom. It started innocently enough. I had listed the house with my agent, framing it as a standard sale. Mark and Lisa appeared eager, presenting themselves as the ideal buyers. Polite, meticulous, and thoroughly charming. They never questioned the price, never hesitated over the inspection reports, and never noticed the faint hints in the original deed documents that the house came with more than just a selling price. I didn't intervene. After all, legally, everything was theirs once the papers were signed. Or so they believed. Closing day arrived with fanfare. Mark and Lisa held hands as they walked through the doorway for the first time as owners, the sunlight spilling across the hardwood floors like a promise. I lingered in the shadows of the living room, watching them plan renovations, discuss paint colors, and envision weekend barbecues in the garden. It was almost amusing how completely they had fallen for the illusion of ownership. Weeks passed, and I maintained a careful distance, watching their excitement grow. I had left one thing buried in the paperwork, hidden in plain sight, that no one had noticed. A clause in the deed stating that the property was conditional. The house, I had made clear in a clause hidden in legal jargon most realtors and buyers would skim past, could revert to the original family if certain conditions were violated. Among those conditions, the most critical one had already been broken without their knowledge. They had altered the historic landscaping without approval from the Heritage Committee, something they'd thought trivial. It happened on a sunny afternoon when Mark and Lisa decided to remove an old oak tree near the back porch, convinced it blocked the perfect view. I had been tipped off by a neighbor who had recognized the tree from the original estate documents. I knew then that the moment to act had arrived. The hidden clause was not just a piece of paper, it was a lever. I sent the notice by certified mail, ensuring there was an official record. The letter outlined the violation in precise legal language. Pursuant to Clause 12b of the deed, the removal of any historical or registered flora without prior authorization constitutes a breach of contract, resulting in immediate reversion of ownership to the original owner. I watched their expressions shift from blissful ignorance to incredulous panic as they read it. Mark's hands shook as he reread the document, and Lisa's eyes widened, the confidence that had radiated from her in the garden moments ago evaporating into fear. "What is this?" Mark demanded, his voice cracking. "This has to be a mistake. We signed the papers. We own this place." "Actually," I said calmly, stepping from the shadows, "ownership is conditional. And right now you're in breach. That tree wasn't yours to remove. Neither was the garden redesign. Every alteration counts." Lisa stammered, "But we didn't know. We thought." "I understand," I interrupted, letting my voice remain steady. "But the law doesn't care about assumptions. The clause was there in the original deed. You just overlooked it, as most people do. Unfortunately, that oversight has consequences." Panic turned into desperation. Mark reached for the letter, scanning for loopholes, while Lisa pulled out her phone, frantically trying to call their lawyer. But it was too late. The deed was clear, the breach undeniable, and the law was on my side. The couple who had strutted into my family home with dreams of ownership now faced the harsh reality that their plans had been built on sand. They begged, they argued, they tried to negotiate, promising to plant a new tree, to restore the garden to its original state, to pay fines, anything to hold on to the home. But the clause was unyielding, ironclad in its precision. I watched with an almost clinical detachment as the facade of their confidence crumbled. The house, which had been their dream, became a nightmare, each room a reminder of their overconfidence and oversight. By the end of the week, Mark and Lisa were forced to pack their belongings and leave, their pride in tatters. The neighbors watched, whispering among themselves as the couple, once so certain of their victory, exited the driveway under the weight of legal reality. I had restored my family's home, yes, but more than that, I had reminded everyone that appearances could be deceiving and that arrogance often precedes downfall. I walked through the house the next morning, alone again, running my fingers over the banister and the polished wooden floors. The air smelled faintly of fresh paint and soil, reminders of the couple's frantic renovations. I could almost hear the echoes of their imagined laughter, now replaced by silence. And while the clause had worked as intended, it had also reminded me of the power of preparation, foresight, and patience. The very tools that Mark and Lisa had neglected in their haste to claim a home that wasn't entirely theirs. From that day forward, I made one thing clear to anyone interested in my family's legacy. Every house has a story, every contract has meaning, and every clause is a guardian of the truth. Mark and Lisa had learned that lesson too late, and their dreams had collapsed under the weight of one hidden clause, leaving them with nothing but regret, while I reclaimed what was mine all along.